Before Li Xuan could say a word, Xu Miantu said, "It's still early and the number of bone beads we have isn't enough to guarantee us first place. We naturally need to proceed forward." Zhang Hao also looked at the map and said, "Based on the map, this area is still the safe zone. We can proceed another 10 kilometers without encountering much danger." Li Xuan opened up the map on his phone and nodded after taking a look. Based on the information, there aren't any legendary stage creatures in the vicinity. It should be okay if we proceed forward a little. We need to obtain enough bone beads to be the bona fide winners of Guide City. We cannot afford otherwise. Zhou Wen knew that he needed to dissuade Li Xuan and company from proceeding forward, otherwise the death of any one of them when they encountered the skeleton general would drastically affect his results. Although Zhou Wen didn't have any plans to enter high society via the university he attended, he still wished to enroll in a reputable university. If any of the four of them died, the chances of entering a top reputable university became extremely slim. No matter how well he did in his other subjects, he would only be able to enroll in a first-rate university. That wasn't something Zhou Wen wanted. "Li Xuan, do you believe in the sixth sense?" Zhou Wen pondered for a moment and asked Li Xuan. "What are you getting at?" Li Xuan didn't directly answer as he asked with piqued interest. "I find my sixth sense better than most people. Since I was little, I would have a vague feeling just before encountering danger. This feeling leaves me very uncomfortable. Although I'm not sure if it's a premonition for danger, I usually encounter trouble soon after." Zhou Wen continued, "And I just had a very uncomfortable feeling." "Just admit to being afraid. Why use sixth sense as an excuse?" Xu Miantu spoke with contempt. Li Xuan sized up Zhou Wen for a moment before casting his gaze at Zhang Hao. Zhang Hao thought and then said, "The bone beads we have at present can't guarantee us first place. It might be a little inappropriate if we were to head back now." Clearly, Zhang Hao was supportive of continuing forward. Seeing Li Xuan somewhat persuaded, Zhou Wen hurriedly said, "Li Xuan, please trust me. Although this feeling of mine doesn't happen every time danger rears its head, great trouble is certain once I have this feeling. If I'm just a coward, I could have just retreated to the entrance and waited for you guys. There isn't a need for me to tell you this." After a pause, Zhou Wen continued, "Just as Xu Miantu said, Guide City is a small city. There aren't many high schoolers who are that strong. I doubt many high schoolers will dare to venture past the designated zone to kill skeleton soldiers. We have already obtained a sizable number of bone beads and can always return to the designated zone to kill more. First place is practically guaranteed without taking any risks. After all, we only have one life. There's no harm in being cautious." "What you say makes sense." Li Xuan seemed to be moved by Zhou Wen's words as he nodded. "Let's do this then. We shall head back before heading elsewhere to hunt skeleton soldiers." "Come on, there's no need for that." Xu Miantu grumbled but didn't dare disobey Li Xuan's decision. He turned around and headed back with the team. Zhang Hao also followed and walked by Li Xuan's side. Obviously, Zhou Wen had already turned around to head back, but after taking 2 steps he suddenly heard Zhang Hao exclaim, "What's that?" He gave everyone a shock as they turned to look. They found him looking at an ancient building with a bewildered look as though he had seen something most terrifying. Zhou Wen, Li Xuan and Xu Miantu subconsciously turned their heads to look when a glint flashed in Zhang He's hands. A strange jade dagger appeared in each of his hands. The jade dagger in Zhang He's left hand struck like a venomous snake's tongue, instantly stabbing Li Xuan. The foot-long blade plunged into his waist completely. This sudden development happened so abruptly that Xu Miantu didn't even realize what was happening when the other jade dagger in Zhang He's right hand swiped at his neck. Xu Miantu had retreated quickly but had failed to avoid being injured. Although none of his arteries were severed, his neck was instantly dyed red with blood. "Zhang Hao. What are you doing?" Xu Miantu wore a look of alarm as he covered the wound on his neck, shouting as he retreated. He was filled with disbelief over what had just happened. Zhang Hao ignored Xu Miantu as he clenched the pair of jade daggers with both hands, staring intently at the wound on Li Xuan's waist. He was responsible for the wound and he knew what kind of effect such a wound would have, however, the flesh and fat at the wound seemed to possess a certain force that exerted pressure on the wound. The tiny amount of blood that had seeped out was nearly impossible for a wound this deep. "I never expected that the promiscuous third scion of the Li family would have mastered something that would require being a virgin, the invincible Kannate divine art," Zhang Hao said slowly as he glared at Li Xuan. Zhou Wen was similarly alarmed when he heard invincible Kannate divine art. Primordial energy skills and companion beasts could be obtained by hunting dimensional creatures, but primordial energy arts weren't things that could be obtained by dimensional crystals. Legend had it that primordial energy arts stemmed from ancient arts like Chinese Mquigong/M, and Battlechi/M, or Japanese Ninjutsu/M. However, due to the lack of primordial energy crystals in the past, those arts lacked the support of primordial energy, preventing them from expressing their true might. It was only when the dimensional creatures appeared, allowing humans to absorb dimensional crystals, that these arts grew in use, gradually developing into present-day primordial energy arts. Primordial energy arts had significant effects on humans. Absorbing dimensional crystals allowed humans to grow stronger and evolve, but this wasn't sufficient at advancing between stages. Instead, it was primordial energy arts that possessed the power to allow a breakthrough of such restrictions. For instance, if Zhou Wen wanted to advance from the mortal stage to the legendary stage, simply absorbing dimensional crystals would be insufficient. He would need to advance ascetic meditation to a whole new realm before his body would evolve to the legendary stage. However, primordial energy arts had their differences. Ascetic meditation could, at best, advance Zhou Wen to the legendary stage, the maximum it could go. It was unable to advance Zhou Wen to the epic stage, no matter how much more he cultivated in it. Among the known primordial energy arts, there were fewer than 20 that allowed humans to advance to the epic stage. Invincible Connate Divine Art was one of them. Furthermore, Invincible Connate Divine Art had a strange cultivation requirement. It required the cultivator to be a virgin. Once one was no longer a virgin, the Invincible Connate Divine Art would become ineffective, losing all of its original might. Article 22 of 1597. Due to the strange cultivation requirement, the Invincible Connate Divine Art was also known as a Virgin Divine Art. It was the least cultivated among all the epic stage capable primordial energy arts. Firstly, Invincible Connate Divine Art could only be cultivated by men. Women who took up slightly more than half of the human population were incapable of cultivating it. Furthermore, with the requirement of being a virgin, even fewer people cultivated in it. No matter how potent the Invincible Connate Divine Art was, to become useless the moment one lost their virginity was a fatal flaw. Of course, the typical person didn't have the chance to acquire it, so they had no chance of cultivating it even if they wished to. Zhou Wen wouldn't be too surprised if someone else had cultivated in it, but Li Xuan was a man who found himself swimming amongst women daily. Therefore, it was truly unbelievable that he had managed to master the Invincible Connate Divine Art. Li Xuan didn't look at the wound on his waist. In fact, due to the compression and suppression of his muscles, the wound had basically stopped bleeding. Did my second brother send you? Li Xuan glared at Zhang Hao as he asked. He didn't wear the blank, ignorant look that Xu Mian wore. Zhang Hao nodded and said, I originally thought that it wasn't necessary for him to take such actions, but from the look of it, your second brother has quite a discerning eye. For you to maintain your virginity, despite swimming in pussy daily, you are truly an incredible genius. You will definitely be a thorn in his side. Zhang Hao, are you mad? You are actually helping Li Mobai kill Brother Xuan. Do you not know that if Brother Xuan dies here, there will be no way we can answer to Godfather? Don't forget how much we owe Godfather for his kindness. He also dotes on Brother Xuan the most, so how can you bear to make him sad? Xu Mian said as he held his wound. His injury was a lot lighter than Li Xuan's, but unfortunately, he hadn't cultivated in the Invincible Connate Divine Art. The blood that he had lost was enough to make his head spin. Zhang Hao ignored Xu Mian as he gripped his dangers tightly, staring intently at Li Xuan like a ravenous wolf. Xu Mian still wasn't done when he was interrupted by Li Xuan. Li Xuan looked at Zhang Hao and said, I've never fought brother for anything since I was little. To prevent him from second-guessing me, I spent all my time with women and never paid attention to any Li family matters. Yet, he still is unwilling to let me off. Two tigers cannot share one mountain. A family can't have two heads. If there's anything to blame, it's that you only acted like a pig instead of being a real one. Otherwise, none of this would be necessary, Zhang Hao said. Zhang Hao, do you really believe you can kill me? Li Xuan said coldly. By telling you this much, it shows how determined I am to kill you. Your mastering of the Invincible Connate Divine Art has indeed exceeded my expectations, but unfortunately, you are only at the mortal stage and have yet to advance to the legendary stage. Your death is a certainty today. As Zhang Hao spoke, he tore off his left sleeve, revealing his entire left arm. There was a spiraling blue-green tattoo that nearly covered Zhang Hao's entire left arm, a coiled snake. The snake tattoo was shimmering with a demonic green-blue glow as though it was alive. Green-blue scales surfaced and enveloped Zhang Hao's entire left arm and hand, making his arm appear like a bizarre venomous snake exuding extremely uncanny vibes. Explosive scaled snake, a legendary stage companion beast. Impossible. You are only at the mortal stage. How could you incubate a legendary stage companion beast? Don't tell me that you have already advanced to the legendary stage. To reach the legendary stage at 16. That's impossible. Xu Mian stared at Zhang Hao's left arm as he exclaimed, a look of horror plastering his face. Zhang Hao shook his head slightly. I haven't advanced to the legendary stage. I'm just capable of using the explosive scaled snake. How is it possible to incubate one without advancing to the legendary stage? The primordial energy needed by an explosive scaled snake is enough to suck dry anyone at the mortal stage. It's impossible to incubate one. Xu Mian still found it unbelievable. Li Xuan harumphed and said, Brother sure went for broke in order to kill me. There's only one way to possess a legendary stage companion beast at the mortal stage without incubating it yourself. It's to let a legendary stage expert with a legendary stage companion beast transfer it to the person at the mortal stage, even at the cost of their lives. You are indeed smart. Unfortunately, you will have to die today. Zhang Hao no longer hesitated as he rushed towards Li Xuan. Meanwhile, his arm that resembled a snake slashed down with the jade dagger. He was exceedingly fast as his snake-like arm seemed to phase away. It was almost impossible for one to use the naked eye to capture its trajectory. As an uncanny green-blue stream of light, it flashed across Li Xuan's neck. It was at a speed so fast that it even exceeded the skeleton general's spear attack. It gave Zhou Wen the impression that Li Xuan was doomed. But to his surprise, he heard a clang. Li Xuan had gripped a lightning-fast jade dagger, holding it right in front of him. Li Xuan's hand holding the dagger, or perhaps it should be said that most of his body was enveloped by black iron armor. Black Knight, a legendary stage companion beast. So you have also used the same method to obtain a legendary stage companion beast at the mortal stage. It's no wonder you held no fear. Zhang Hao instantly recognized what the black iron armor on the legendary stage represented. No, you are wrong. I don't have to use such a cruel method to obtain a legendary companion beast. Nor do I have such a need to. Li Xuan exerted strength, immediately snapping the dagger in his hand and leaving Zhang Hao to retreat rapidly with the remnants of the jade dagger. The invincible Connate divine art is the primordial energy art that has the most amount of primordial energy amongst its peers. Even though I'm only at the mortal stage, I still have the chance of incubating a legendary stage companion beast despite them being the weaker ones and me needing to take on some risk. However, it's more than sufficient when dealing with your explosive scaled snake. Li Xuan had a sharp glint in his eyes as he approached Zhang Hao. It's no wonder second brother views you as a threat. Such talent is indeed terrifying, Zhang Hao said as he retreated. After saying that, he turned around and ran deep into the ancient city. Li Xuan didn't hesitate as he immediately pursued him. Don't chase after him. Zhou Wen hurriedly yelled to stop Li Xuan when he saw Zhang Hao fleeing in the direction of the skeleton general. However, Li Xuan was bent on killing Zhang Hao. There was no hesitation in his huge strides. The two probably had speed valued at 8 or 9, making it too late for Zhou Wen to catch up with them. Soon, they vanished around a corner. Zhou Wen slowed down his pace without continuing his pursuit. Instead, it was Shu Miantu who handled the wound on his neck before chasing after them. What are you waiting for? Why aren't you chasing after them to help Brother Xuan? Shu Miantu yelled at him when he saw Zhou Wen stop. Zhou Wen held his phone and launched the ancient Imperial City dungeon as he said to Shu Miantu, after you. Article 23 of 1597. Coward, Shu Miantu cursed under his breath before ignoring Zhou Wen. He immediately continued his pursuit. Zhou Wen didn't mind really. He wished to help Li Xuan, but heading over was of zero use. Zhang Hao and Li Xuan had legendary companion beasts while he had none. Death was a certainty for him when facing the skeleton general. It was probably more beneficial for him to find the means of dealing with the skeleton general in-game. The reason Zhou Wen wanted to help Li Xuan was that deep down he knew that Zhang Hao would silence him and Shu Miantu after he had successfully killed Li Xuan to ensure his own safety. Zhang Hao's attack on Shu Miantu had already revealed this thought of his. If Li Xuan was successfully killed, there was no way he would spare Zhou Wen. Therefore, Zhou Wen was inevitably helping himself by helping Li Xuan. However, any help he rendered was useless. The might of a legendary companion beast was not something he could equal at present. Be it against Zhang Hao or the skeleton general, the chances of him being killed was extremely high. As Zhou Wen proceeded forward slowly, he controlled the blood-colored avatar and stormed deep into ancient Imperial City. He didn't know what kind of developments might happen after Li Xuan and Zhang Hao encountered the skeleton general, therefore he needed some preparation. Before encountering the skeleton general with his blood-colored avatar in-game, he heard a blood-curdling roar coming from deep within the ancient city. Pledge my life to defend the city. Pledge my life to defend the city. Zhou Wen's expression changed slightly. This voice was clearly not from Zhang Hao or Li Xuan. However, he had not heard the skeleton general speak while gaming. With a mere thought, Zhou Wen had composed himself as he continued focusing on his game. His surroundings were unable to influence his line of thought. Soon, the blood-colored avatar found the skeleton general in-game and after repeated failed attempts, Zhou Wen had a general understanding of the skeleton general's strength and primordial energy skill. He knew very well that his strength was insufficient to resist the skeleton general, especially when it came to speed. The difference was too disparate, making it difficult for him to even dodge. The skeleton general is stronger than me in every aspect. There's a high chance that he's a dimensional creature at the legendary stage. It's definitely impossible for me to fend him off. However, he's not without flaws. His bone spear is too long, making it unconducive for him to fight in close range. Furthermore, the skeleton horse he's sitting on would affect his attack trajectory beneath the waist. This results in an offensive blind spot. Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar and approached the skeleton general once again, trying to put theory into practice. When the skeleton general charged over, Zhou Wen advanced instead of retreating with the blood-colored avatar. With a forward roll, he rushed under the skeleton horse's belly. Zhou Wen grasped the opportunity perfectly. Despite the skeleton general having the strength and speed, he was unable to attack due to the skeleton horse's obstruction. After the skeleton general raised his spear and stabbed downwards again, Zhou Wen had already rolled over to the other side of the skeleton horse's underside. The skeleton horse was not part of the skeleton general, making it difficult for them to act perfectly as one. This gave Zhou Wen a slim chance of survival and several possibilities. Unfortunately, the skeleton general was just too strong. Zhou Wen had to constantly circle around the skeleton horse to avoid being stabbed by the bone spear. He had no means to launch a counterattack. Even so, this lasted less than 30 seconds before the blood-colored avatar was stabbed by the skeleton general on the ground. Blood immediately splattered as the avatar died on the spot. As he watched the screen go black, Zhou Wen carefully recalled the battle. He soon heard shouts and clashing sounds. Going around a bend, he immediately saw Li Xuan and Zhang Hao fighting each other on the other end of a stone-paved street. And in real life, the skeleton general was around as well. He wore a cape and the skeleton horse he sat on was tall and mighty, its body akin to jade. The bone spear had terrifying barbs and there were blood-colored flames flickering in the skull's eye sockets. He looked formidable. This was a completely different existence to the comic version of the skeleton general in-game. Zhou Wen nearly failed to recognize him. What left Zhou Wen even more intrigued was that the skeleton general was charging everywhere with the skeleton horse, but his target was ultimately fixated on Li Xuan. He ignored Zhang Hao, never attacking him even once. Odd. Why would the skeleton general only be attacking Li Xuan? Seeing the miserable Li Xuan, who kept retreating with his body covered in injuries, Zhou Wen couldn't help but frown slightly. However, when Zhou Wen's gaze carefully observed Zhang Hao, he immediately came to a realization. On Zhang Hao there was an additional bone breastplate. The grayish-white ribs penetrated out of his clothes, protecting his chest and back, making him look odd. From the looks of it, the reason the skeleton general isn't attacking Zhang Hao stems from the bone armor he's wearing. Zhou Wen knew that it was likely a manifestation of a companion beast, but the type was unknown to him. Although Xu Miantu had a nasty tongue, he didn't seem to have a bad character. He rushed over to help Li Xuan when he found the latter in trouble. But the outcome was nothing surprising. Upon clashing, he was sent flying by the skeleton general, tumbling far away across the street and stopping only when he hit a wall. Xu Miantu bent his back like a shrimp, his hands clasping his abdomen. His mouth was filled with blood and there was cold sweat covering his forehead. The grimace he wore spoke volumes of the pain. Be patient. Once I kill Li Xuan, I'll send you off to hell, Zhang Hao said coldly as the dagger in his hand stabbed at Li Xuan's vital spot. Li Xuan was fighting two adversaries alone and he wasn't even at the legendary stage. By relying solely on the legendary Black Knight companion beast, it was taxing on him to hold out in battle. The black armor that encased him was damaged in multiple places and blood seeped through. However, he was a tenacious person. Despite such a perilous situation, he was still able to maintain clarity in thought and avoided most of the lethal strikes. Unfortunately, he just wasn't a legendary stage expert. He was already a stage lower than the skeleton general, and with Zhang Hao taking opportunistic jabs at him, every second placed him in extreme peril. If not for the potent defensive capabilities of his Black Knight armor and the invincible Knate Divine Art's ability to slow down the deterioration of his injuries, he would have long been killed. After watching for a moment, Zhou Wen suddenly shouted at Li Xuan, "Li Xuan, if I can help you distract the skeleton general, how long will it take for you to finish off Zhang Hao?" Zhou Wen's words shocked the trio. In this battle, it was no longer something that a person at the mortal stage could interfere in, much less that of a regular high schooler. Xu Miantu imagined that Zhou Wen was mad, but unfortunately, he didn't have the energy to say a word. Otherwise, he would definitely have ridiculed Zhou Wen. Zhang Hao didn't share the same thoughts. He didn't believe Zhou Wen was capable of the proclaimed feat. He believed that Zhou Wen would be sending himself to his death if he really rushed over to help Li Xuan. 2 minutes. I need that much time, Li Xuan said as he fought for his life. There was no hesitation in his voice. All right. Then, I'll give you 2 minutes. Zhou Wen put away his phone and headed for the battlefield. Article 24 of 1597. Zhou Wen picked up his pace and entered the battlefield in a most ingenious manner, appearing behind the skeleton general. The skeleton general keenly noticed Zhou Wen's appearance and gave up attacking Li Xuan. It struck backward, transforming the bone spear into a cold beam that stabbed at Zhou Wen's head. Without waiting for the skeleton general to raise his spear, Zhou Wen crouched down and lunged for the underside of the skeleton horse. This prevented the bone spear from locking onto him, thus resolving the skeleton general's thrust. Xu Miantu struggled to his feet as he looked at Zhou Wen with a look of disbelief. Zhou Wen had actually managed to hold back the skeleton general. Zhou Wen oscillated between the skeleton horse's sides, occasionally tumbling to the ground. It looked extremely pathetic, but his actions worked. Xu Miantu knew how difficult it was. He had the same idea as Zhou Wen earlier, hoping to hold back the skeleton general to give Li Xuan time to finish off Zhang Hao. However, he had been swept away the moment he approached the skeleton general and nearly died from severe injuries. It made him deeply realize the huge differences between the mortal stage and the legendary stage. Zhou Wen was likewise at the mortal stage, but he had managed to hold back the skeleton general. It might look pathetic, but he remained unharmed the entire time. It left Xu Miantu amazed. Thinking back to his mockery of Zhou Wen, his originally pale face blushed an abnormal red. Zhang Hao was alarmed to see Zhou Wen hold back the skeleton general. Despite all his plans, he had never expected a mortal stage high schooler to be capable of holding back a legendary skeleton general. In fact, Zhang Hao long knew of the existence of the skeleton general in the vicinity. He had planned on taking Li Xuan nearby and letting the skeleton general finish him off. Unfortunately, this plan had been foiled by Zhou Wen. Zhang Hao had no choice but to take action himself, but he ultimately failed. While Zhou Wen was holding back the skeleton general, Li Xuan had already rushed towards Zhang Hao. He unleashed a barrage of punches that shimmered like shooting stars at him. He knew that it wasn't pragmatic to expect a mortal stage hold back the skeleton general for extended periods of time. He had to finish off Zhang Hao before Zhou Wen was killed by the skeleton general. Zhang Hao now truly realized how terrifying this intemperate scion, Li Xuan, was. Despite using similar legendary companion beasts, even with him having two, he was still completely overpowered by Li Xuan. I don't believe I can't last 2 minutes. We are both at the mortal stage and are using legendary companion beasts. Zhang Hao battled Li Xuan with gritted teeth. Bang! In less than 20 seconds, Zhang Hao was hit on the left elbow by Li Xuan, snapping the bone armor in two. The color in Zhang Hao's face drained as he rapidly retreated. However, upon seeing Li Xuan pursue him like a leech, his eyes flashed with a ruthless glint. With a swing of his left arm, the explosive scaled snake tattoo shimmered as a brightly colored blue-green venomous snake tore out from his arm, coiling towards the pursuing Li Xuan. Seizing this opportunity, Zhang Hao pushed his speed to the limit, allowing him to traverse 4 to 5 meters. He was attacking Zhou Wen from behind with a dagger. Ah! This sudden development caused Xu Mian to cry out. Zhou Wen was already in a perilous situation while holding back the skeleton general. Now, with Zhang Hao sneaking an attack on him, death seemed inevitable for him. Li Xuan was alarmed and furious as well. However, with the explosive scaled snake blocking him, he didn't have the time to rescue Zhou Wen. While the bone spear thrust around at lightning speed, a dagger stabbed at Zhou Wen's waist from the back. At this critical moment, Zhou Wen exerted strength into his legs, allowing him to do a sharp turn. A powerful twisting force erupted from his waist muscles as his body twisted at an odd angle. Zhou Wen's feet were still facing the skeleton general's side, but his torso had already turned to face Zhang Hao. The bone spear stabbed at Zhou Wen, just brushed past his cheek. This left a faint wound on Zhou Wen's cheek, but he remained stoic. Without even blinking, he threw a punch at Zhang Hao's dagger. A look of mockery flashed in Zhang Hao's eyes. Although the explosive scaled snake had left his body, he still had the bone breastplate protecting him. It was also a legendary companion beast and, although it wasn't a strength type, it augmented his strength a little. It wasn't something a typical mortal stage human could withstand. Furthermore, the jade dagger was made of special materials. Not only did it have the ability to kill dimensional creatures, but it also had a terrifying sharpness to it. Die. Zhang Hao steeled his heart as he exerted all his strength, gathering it at the blade tip. He wanted to slice through Zhou Wen's fingers. Dodge. You can't handle it. Li Xuan cried out in panic. Xu Mian spewed another mouthful of blood, a result of his anxiety, not his injuries. At the instant the fist and blade met, a sanguine glow shimmered across Zhou Wen's fist. The red carapace instantly wrapped around his fist, condensing like a dark red boxing glove. Companion beast. Zhang Hao's eyes constricted as an ominous feeling arose in him. As mortal stage companion beasts were rare, he had subconsciously imagined the companion beast to be at the legendary stage. This alarmed him greatly. However, the distance between the fist and blade was just too narrow. Just as the thought came to Zhang Hao, Zhou Wen's fist had already struck the blade of the jade dagger. Crack. The mighty force tore through the blade as cracks rapidly extended, shattering the entire dagger, turning them into countless fragments. Bang. Zhou Wen's punch didn't pause as it struck Zhang Hao's dagger-wielding fist. It smashed the bones in his hand and arm. The fractured bone tore out of Zhang Hao's flesh as blood gushed out. Without the protection of the bone armor, his arm popped like popcorn. He flew out with a tragic cry. All of this happened in a split second. As Xu Mian watched, he glared with a wide-open mouth, momentarily speechless. Li Xuan was thrilled. Ignoring the explosive scaled snake that embroiled him, he charged forward and smashed open Zhang Hao's head in midair. There were no more chances for him. Zhou Wen was calm. After destroying Zhang Hao's arm, his body twisted around like a loach and, using the momentum, lunged for the skeleton horse's back. This made the skeleton general miss once more. Everything happened with such fluidity, as though it had been practiced countless times. It was a beautiful sight. Who the hell is he? Xu Mian snapped to his senses as his mind was filled with puzzlement. He refused to believe that Zhou Wen was merely an ordinary high schooler from Guide City. Article 25 of 1597. Zhang Hao's death signified the dissipation of his companion beast. The explosive scaled snake and the bone armor companion beasts exploded, turning into bits of primordial energy that scattered across the land. Li Xuan didn't have the luxury of time to entertain nonsensical thoughts like Xu Mian. After finishing Zhang Hao, he rushed straight for the skeleton general. At the same time he shouted, "Zhou Wen, I'll attract his attention. Try to find an opening to deliver the lethal strike." All right. Zhou Wen retreated. Just as the skeleton general was about to chase after him, Li Xuan had already delivered a punch to the skeleton horse's head. This contained the strength of a black knight, but all it did was cause the skeleton horse's head to flinch and its feet to stagger for a moment. Pledge my life to defend the city, the skeleton general was enraged as the glow in his eyes burgeoned. He let out a furious roar as he charged at Li Xuan with his spear. Li Xuan could barely kite the skeleton general with the Black Knight's powers, but he was completely suppressed. He had no means to counterattack. Zhou Wen circled around the skeleton horse without giving the skeleton general a chance to attack him. From time to time, he would deliver a vigor divine fist at the horse's legs or body. It affected the skeleton horse's mobility, giving Li Xuan a breather. The two besieged the skeleton general, but everything remained in a tizzy. The skeleton general in-game doesn't seem this powerful. Zhou Wen was quite puzzled. He was certain of his judgment. It wasn't only aspects like strength or speed, most importantly, the skeleton general in-game was rather uniform in his attacks. It was obvious he was a NPC in a game. But in real life, the skeleton general was clearly more intelligent and autonomous than in-game. His combat experience seemed to be honed from multiple battles, making him completely different. Zhou Wen hadn't seen this phenomenon on the ordinary skeleton soldiers. Be it in-game or in real life, the skeleton soldiers shared the same rigidness. What's the reason? Zhou Wen was momentarily unable to figure out the reason. Bang! Li Xuan was sent flying by the skeleton general's spear sweep, but he managed to stop himself after tumbling about 8 meters. He got to his feet and charged forward once again while enduring the pain. Meanwhile, he shouted, "This skeleton general is a little odd. He appears to be getting stronger." If any other mortal stage were to suffer such injuries, they would probably be dead, even if they had a legendary companion beast protecting them. However, Li Xuan's invincible Connate divine art was indeed formidable. It allowed him to continue battling with full force. Zhou Wen had heard of how potent epic stage primordial energy arts were in the past, but it was only today that he realized how disparate things were. The ascetic meditation he cultivated had similar benefits to the invincible Connate divine art. They were primordial energy arts that strengthened one's constitution, but the differences were huge when a comparison was made. If he had suffered injuries as terrible as Li Xuan's, it would be unlikely that he could get back on his feet. As expected, I need to cultivate in a top-grade primordial energy art. But where am I to get one? These things aren't like primordial energy skills that can drop from the game. Zhou Wen was slightly vexed. In the schools of Earth's League, especially in university, different primordial energy arts would be taught. However, they were capped out at the legendary stage. There weren't any epic stage primordial energy arts to be taught. Zhou Wen had no chance of cultivating in such primordial energy arts even if he wanted to. Bro, stop daydreaming. Help me finish him quickly. Li Xuan was running about yelling while being pursued by the skeleton general. The black armor that encased him had nearly shattered. Zhou Wen had no intention of helping. Instead, he said, "It's useless. My strength isn't enough to injure it. I think it's better we flee." "Don't you have a weaponized companion beast?" Li Xuan exclaimed. "It's only a mortal companion beast. Although the augmentation to strength is great, it wouldn't be very effective against such a legendary stage-dimensional creature," Zhou Wen explained. Mortal companion beast. Li Xuan immediately felt speechless. The higher the grade of a dimensional creature, the easier it could condense a dimensional crystal. The chances of producing a companion egg was also higher. Therefore, it was the low-grade dimensional creatures that could hardly produce companion eggs. Therefore, a mortal companion beast could be more expensive than his Black Knight legendary companion beast, but at this juncture, money meant nothing. That's bad. Although my Black Knight also augments my strength, it mainly augments my defense. It's not great when it comes to strength. Damn it. I should have learned a few primordial energy skills with potent destructive forces. Or I should have incubated a strength-type legendary companion beast, Li Xuan said in regret. If not for your black armor protecting you, you would have died a couple of times. Having a strength-type legendary companion beast is useless, Zhou Wen said with a shake of his head. Li Xuan no longer had the time to chat with Zhou Wen, for the skeleton general almost stabbed him in his thigh. The Black Knight companion beast didn't enhance his speed, so Li Xuan was unable to dodge the skeleton general's thrusts. All he could do was rely on the black armor to resist the blows. It seemed quite tragic, for it appeared as though he would be stabbed to death at any time. The skeleton horse was too fast, and, with Li Xuan not being at the legendary stage, there was no way of escaping. "Zhou Wen, I beg you to save Brother Xuan." Shu Miantu struggled to get up as he pleaded with Zhou Wen. At this moment, Shu Miantu no longer had the arrogance from before. Instead, he treated Zhou Wen as a pillar of support. Deep down, he no longer treated Zhou Wen as a higher schooler from a small city. Just the mortal companion beast was not something the typical person could possess. From his point of view, Zhou Wen definitely had an extraordinary background. And his previous actions made Shu Miantu believe that the former could save Li Xuan if he so wished. Zhou Wen pondered for a moment and said, "It's not completely impossible, but I'm not sure if it will work." "We have to try it regardless," Shu Miantu said. Zhou Wen nodded slightly as he observed the skeleton general, but was thinking about the skeleton general in-game. He had fought the skeleton general several times in-game. It wasn't without any benefit, because through his observations, he had noticed a weakness on the skeleton general. However, Zhou Wen wasn't certain if the weakness in-game was the same in real life. After all, the skeleton general was a lot more powerful in real life. But at this moment, Zhou Wen could only give it a try. Seeing Li Xuan being pursued by the skeleton general, Zhou Wen silently circled to the back and gradually approached to await an opportunity. Without needing Zhou Wen to say a word, Li Xuan knew that he needed to create a window of opportunity for Zhou Wen. Li Xuan gritted his teeth and used his black armor to envelope the left area of his abdomen to take on the skeleton general's thrust. When the sharp tip plunged into the black armor, it ripped apart Li Xuan's flesh. However, before the spear could be retracted, he gripped the stone spear tightly. Without any hesitation, Zhou Wen leapt up and jumped onto the skeleton general's back. He rode on the skeleton horse just like the skeleton general while reaching out his hand at his target's neck. Lodging the head up to the sky, he used his other hand, which wore the Vigor Ant's boxing glove, slamming it heavily at the skeleton general's eye sockets. Article 26 of 1597.